Einen schönen guten Abend, good evening, everybody. Thank you for coming. Sorry, it's a bit tense, but that's good that you are here, that all of you are here, because it will be a very interesting evening. This I can promise. Together with Sasha, I want to say some words of welcome. You know, the situation in the Balkans, especially in Serbia, is also very tense, differently tense. There are many more people on the streets than in this room. And I find it personally good that there is movement, there are demonstrations. When I started to be connected, more or less, or very close to Serbia, it was Otpor who was on the streets. I was then in the European Parliament, and by the way, I may especially welcome also Ulrike Lunacek, who was my colleague for many years, and she dealt especially, of course, also with the Kosovo and indirectly with Serbia also. And we had big hopes and expectation that things will change dramatically and strongly in Serbia. And of course, as Serbia is a very important country for the whole region, in the whole region. Unfortunately, things moved not always in that direction, and especially with the killing of Zoran Đinđić, came a momentum of stopping, maybe of returning to former ways of government. And I think Serbia, a country which I like very much, and the people I like very much, deserves a better policy. And I think when we have the title here, From Protest to Progress, we wish that kind of progress, of course, in a peaceful way, as the demonstrations are peaceful demonstrations. It's not about force, it's not about toppling a government, but it's about putting pressure on all responsible people and in the government and elsewhere else, in order to go more into the direction of progress and not to stop the democratic development. That, of course, is not only true for Serbia, it's for many other countries. You know that we have big demonstrations in Turkey, or Turkey, where it's impossible to understand. The mayor of Istanbul has been put into prison, and not only himself. We have demonstrations also in Georgia and, of course, in several other countries. Demonstrations are part of the democracy. If something is not going well or is going not in the direction it should go, then demonstrations are one form of democratic protest or democratic policy change. And that is very important. May I just a small remark, because I mentioned the European Parliament, and as Ulrike and myself are very strongly pro-European, I know that some of the demonstrators, not only in Serbia, also in Georgia, maybe also in Turkey, are a bit disappointed that the European Union is not supporting them strongly. Quite enormously is the demand, where is Europe? A Europe of value, and I think Vedran is one of those who always reminds us on that point. But for some days ago, I was in Poland. I met the spiritual leader of Solidarność, Adam Michnik, and then asked him, what do you say, shouldn't we, as Europeans, not be more strongly and outspoken in support of the demonstrations? And he said, look, I know, there will be a lot of disappointment, as it was also in Poland. But you have to understand that nations, and also a union of nations like the European Union, have their own geopolitical interests, and they will never be totally on the side of the demonstrations. Now, we from the European Parliament always deplored that the reports of the Commission, maybe under pressure of the Council, were not more outspoken, no more critical. And I think we still have that kind of feeling that a stronger support should be helping the demonstration. But on the other hand, I want to say one should not be too disappointed, because there are other geopolitical or political arguments or considerations on the government side which do not show that kind of support which we would like to have. But I think here in this room, I would say, or many of us who have that kind of sympathy for the Western Balkans, wish full success in the sense of democratization of Serbia and all the other countries who have also their problem. It's not only Serbia, but of course now is the big demonstration and the big visible demonstrations there, because we want a step forward towards democracy. And as we discussed also in the afternoon, maybe also in Austria, some of that democratic forces could be more visible, but that's another issue. And I want to thank you again for coming. I want to cut now my words and hand over to Sasha. And thank you, Sasha, for making it possible that we have this meeting here. Many others, of course, are on the side. Vedran from the ÖIP and also the Karl-Renner-Institut is on our side. So it's a common enterprise and a common effort since many years already in support, especially of the younger generation of the Western Balkans. Sasha, now it's your turn.
Thank you, Mr. Hannes. So it's not easy to talk after you. So welcome from my side. Basically, I'm here to welcome you on behalf of Friedrich-Ebert-Stiftung, the regional office from Sarajevo. And I want to take a moment and thank all the partners that basically are hosting us tonight. Special thanks to Mr. Hannes Svoboda, Vedran Džihić, Steffi, and our friends from Karl-Renner-Institut as well. So before we start, I just want to take a moment and acknowledge the times that we are living in. So with all these war atrocities, insecurities, crazy, lunatic world leaders, I really believe that we have responsibility to keep our eyes widely open and monitor all the processes, movements, and people who are giving us even the slightest hope for a better future. So for me, the students' protest, the students from Serbia are those hope for a better future. And tonight we're talking about them. Our topic will be about the students' protest, but also about the Generation Z. Obviously, Generation Z understands better than we do. So I wish you a fruitful and interesting debate. So I'm not going to keep long, so thank you for coming.
Thank you.
And without much announcement, I'm going to take Mr. Svoboda and Sasha for giving us an introduction and also introduce myself. Welcome from our side as well. I am Sasha's colleague from the Friedrich-Ebert-Stiftung Emma Smola. And before we start with the panel discussion today, we would also like to use some time to kind of set the floor for the discussion. And to do that, we are going to use what we have prepared for you today as well, which is the Friedrich-Ebert Foundation's youth study. So as Sasha mentioned, we're going to be talking about Gen Z, about young people, and we think that this is a good opportunity to also talk about more general findings about this generation. So FES conducted a youth study on 12 countries of Southeast Europe. It was just published last year and was conducted in March of 2024. Our youth study covers 12 countries from Slovenia to Turkey, and we have polled almost 9,000 young people aged 14 to 29. And we're going to talk a bit about their opinions and attitudes, not only from their individual perspective, but also about the societies that they live in, and hopefully also navigate or set the floor for what we're going to be discussing later on, which is the from protest to progress. So all of us have our own interpretation of what the Gen Z is. What we do know is that they're digital natives, and that they seem to somehow be more political than the previous generations. We wanted to look back to the youth study and see whether or not this was true. And while there are some movements, we were a bit surprised as to what these movements ended up being. So the study is titled Independent but Concerned, which is also how we find the young people in Southeast Europe to be. The independent part being that they are actually very satisfied to a certain extent with their individual lives. So they are comfortable within their own shoes, but when it comes to their societies, they are a generation that is predominantly concerned. One thing that we found was that the priority concern of young people was actually two things: corruption and unemployment. So a lot of their decision making is driven by socioeconomic uncertainties that they're living in, and it also shapes the way that they view politics, which is something that we're going to be talking about today. Our findings are that the interest for politics among the young generation is increasing, but it's still relatively low. So on a scale from 1 to 5, on a question of how interested young people are in politics, the average grade within these 12 countries was around 3. And while it is slightly better than in 2018, when we last conducted another round of this youth studies, it is still relatively low. Also on the lower end of the scale is how young people perceive their political knowledge. So they don't perceive it to be necessarily high, much like their interest in engaging politically. What's perhaps even more interesting is that we also observe the gender differences when it comes to political engagement between young men and young women, where young men tend to be slightly more interested in politics and slightly more identify themselves on the center-right end of the political spectrum. Conversely, young women in the region are those who are leading a different type of political engagement. They are the ones who are more engaged in civil society, in volunteer work, in protests, and what we're actually seeing mushrooming throughout Europe today. But these slight increases of interest and knowledge come with a caveat, and this caveat is the support that Generation Z has for democracy as a good form of governance. So where they are more political in nature, they're not necessarily in support of democracy as previous generations were. So out of the 12 countries we surveyed, only one shows an increase where young people consider democracy a good form of governance. A lot of them also consider that exploring other options like supporting strongman leaders, supporting more authoritarian options of governments is a viable choice. With this democratic part said, I would assume that many are also curious about the socioeconomic certainties that I've mentioned because they are what drives their decision making the most. And it turns out that a lot of young people who even currently have a job are scared of being unemployed. So the fear of not having a job is prevalent throughout all of the 12 countries. And in addition to that fear of unemployment, they are also afraid of the quality of public services and how it reflects on the quality of their life. So while they're not necessarily see themselves as being very politically interested and politically knowledgeable, they actually are. And the concerns that they have are the everyday concerns that we would perhaps attach more to an older generation, not necessarily the young ones. And in addition to driving a lot of their decision-making domestically, it's also what's driving their concerns when it comes to potentially leaving their countries. So still migration is something that a lot of young people in Southeast Europe consider a viable route, that the grass somewhere else might be greener. And the desire to emigrate for all 12 countries ultimately boils down to socioeconomic concerns. So when we asked young people in our study what is the primary reason which drives their interest to leave the country, it was some form of improvement to their socioeconomic circumstances. So either better job opportunities, more opportunities as such, or better salaries and more secure work. When we took another variable into the equation and took a look at what their current employment status is, turns out that the desire to emigrate was the least among young people who are currently holding full-time permanent jobs. So ultimately, when we ask young people, should I stay or should I go, or when we ask ourselves, is what kind of life we have at the moment. So even though they are generally optimistic about their future, they're generally pro-European Union, they still are mostly plagued by socioeconomic concerns and what kind of future they can essentially have within the societies they're currently living in. I just mentioned the support for the European Union, and I will end there before I hand over to our panelists. Young people in Southeast Europe are predominantly supportive of the European Union, but these trends are changing as well. Out of the 12 countries that we observed, 4 are EU member states, so Slovenia, Croatia, Bulgaria, and Romania. And something that maybe also, since we are in a European Union member state, we should have in mind is that those young people are showing the biggest difference in a sense that they are increasingly skeptical of whether or not their country should stay in the European Union. They are becoming more closer to their non-European Union colleagues and neighbors, not necessarily because the Western Balkans are doing so great, but because they see that the European Union is not doing as great either. So we see a narrowing gap in satisfaction on pretty much everything that we've measured: democracy, economic stability, security, not necessarily because anyone is doing well, but rather because we are all starting to realize just the amount of problems that we are, as young people, experiencing. And with that, so it was quite a bit of findings, it was quite a bit of input. I hope that at least some of them will also make you think about the youth in Southeast Europe in a different manner, but also make the panel discussion a bit more engaging and interesting. In case you are curious about the youth study and would like to have more findings, I will remain in the audience for the Q&A, but you can also go to our website, Friedrich-Ebert-Stiftung Dialogue Southeast Europe, find the full-length study and more information on the study itself. So I wasn't hogging the mic, this was a pre-agreed upon introduction, and with that I would like to leave it to our panelists and to our moderator, Stephanie, to take you through from protest to progress.
Thank you so much, Emma. Thank you so much, Emma. I was going to introduce you, but you did that perfectly well yourself. And to everyone here, a big thank you for coming. I think it's quite amazing how many of you showed up. We did not see that coming, and it does show that there is a huge interest in what is going on. And we do know we are not only going to speak about Serbia in general, but I mean, Serbia is the country right now where these protests, the student protests, are ongoing now for nearly 4 months, and they have like huge support from the students, but also from the professors, and they are taking place all over the country, and it is really something very remarkable what is going on right now in Serbia. Maybe just very briefly, we had a workshop today already, and there are other people here in this room who have been participating in this workshop, and I will invite them very happily also to give some insight if they want, so raise your hands. I mean, I see Boris sitting there, and I also see Tara, so thank you so much for coming as well, and Arban is somewhere in the back also from Kosovo, so it's quite a unique group here, so I will give you the floor as well. I will now just very briefly introduce our panelists, and I start with Larisa Lojic. She is European Youth Delegate, and she's Austrian, but coming from a diaspora from Bosnia-Herzegovina. And I think this is also something we want to tackle in the discussion afterwards. So do these protests, you know, this progress from youth protests, does it also have a transnational element? So this is also something we would like to tackle. I would then also like to introduce not Boris Kocinovic, but Tatjana Ražić. But Boris is also here, but they decided to switch places just for right now, but Boris is also welcomed and to hop in. And she is a student from the University of Novi Sad, and she will give us some insights from how they are doing, what they are planning, what is going on literally on the ground. And thank you so much for coming. I think it's very valuable what you are doing and that you are sharing this together with us. Luka Cekic, he's also diaspora, Serb diaspora, and he used to work here at the IIP, and I'm very happy that he also joins us here. He also went to the protests in Belgrade, but he also participated here. And I think this is also going to be somehow interesting, like how do also the Serb diaspora see the issues? And Luka is very knowledgeable. He has been following what is happening in the region for many, many years, and I know him for a long time, so I'm happy that you came. So welcome, Luka. And last but not least, I mean, most people here coming from Austria might not know him at all. Vedran Djic. He's the person dealing with the Balkans in a very, very professional way, and we are happy to have him here in Austria. He's a very good analyst, and I'm happy that he will also maybe share some lights on the European geopolitical aspects. And thank you very much, Vedran, for your cooperation as always. Last but not least, the cooperation partners are important. Friedrich-Ebert-Stiftung, thank you so much. Karl-Renner-Institut, represented today by Konstantin, and the Austrian Institute for International Politics, represented by Vedran. We have a cooperation for 6-7 years already, dealing especially with young generation and how they are shaping the future, what are their ideas, and what can we learn from them, and what is this power of ideas transforming into. But I would like to start, obviously, with you, Tatjana. Maybe you just can give us some accounts on what you're experiencing, what is happening in Serbia. I do think most of you know that the protests happened kind of after in Novi Sad there was this crackdown of a reconstructed train ceiling, station ceiling, and 15 people died. And it's quite
16,
obvious.
sorry.
16. So,
yes.
Yeah, there died a person afterwards, I think. Then 16 people died. So what this also means is that in the end, this kind of corruption, because it was reconstructed, actually does even lead to death. So it does really have impact. But the floor is yours. Just give us your accounts, like what is happening, what are you doing, and what is actually what you are demanding.
Well, okay, it works. Hello, everyone, first of all. Thank you for being interested in this topic before I start. The question, what's happening is in Serbia, I have no idea where to start because everything is happening in Serbia right now. Yesterday was 5 months since the tragedy in Novi Sad happened. It happened on the 1st of November last year, and the 5th of November was the date when the massive protests became in Serbia. A month later, on 2nd of December, our faculty of philosophy, was in the blockade. Actually, the blockade started. But we weren't the first ones. The first ones were the colleagues from Belgrade's Academy of Dramatic Arts. And that is what's happening for 5 months now in Serbia. We've had protests in almost every city, not only bigger cities, but places, towns, villages even. Also, during the March of this year, we've had almost 1,700 protests all around Serbia, which never happened. And that is a fact. Also, in Belgrade on the 15th of March was the biggest protest that ever happened in Serbia. Also, on the other hand, we have a lot of corruption. We have a lot of lies around us from the government. We have a lot of pressures. We have a lot of threats. Many students were targeted by the regime media. We have regime media. We have public services that are not doing their jobs. So that's what we are trying to bring to the light spot, that it's not working this way. We may be fulfilled with the way that we are living currently. We can say, it's okay, we are studying here. I'm 4th year personally. I could say, I don't care, I have like few exams left, but that's not the point. The point is the world that I will live in after I finish my studies. Not only me, but thousands and thousands of students all around Serbia. I want to say that currently every faculty of every university that exists in Serbia is in the blockade. Of course, not the private ones. So that is the current situation. We have our demands. We are currently working on that to unite all the demands of every university there is in Serbia, but in general, the main demand is to open all the documentation and paperwork that is related to the reconstruction of the railway station that fell. The fact is that rooftop was reconstructed. It worked like 60 years perfectly, and then when it was reconstructed, a few months later it fell. It is the public space. It's a public train station built by Serbia and Serbian money, which is very, very, it's catastrophic that it happened that way. 16 people are dead because of it, and that is not the only example of corruption killing people, not just in Serbia. We have North Macedonia as an example, unfortunately now, and it keeps on going. The only thing that we wanted to say is it's enough of this.
Thank you so much, Tatiana. That is actually also in line with the findings of the youth study, right? That they, in the end, said, and the youth study was done before the protests in Serbia started, but they actually said that the biggest problem, what they are perceiving on a societal level, is corruption, and this is also why people are now going to the streets and demanding rule of law. So it's not this political, they want Vučić to go, although, I mean, it has an element of authoritarianism or critique of authoritarianism as well, but it's literally about functioning institutions, democracy, democracy maybe as well, but especially corruption and rule of law. And I think this is something remarkable. What I also think is interesting that at least, I mean, Vučević, he needed to step down, and so did the mayor of Novi Sad, which is something normally not happening in Serbia, where it is not the first protest happening. There are happening protests since many years. The recent one I remember on the gun violence, I remember Luke and me talked about it a lot. It was also a huge protest, but not in this form, not for this length, and not in this all of the country, and not on this, I would say, yeah, how it is materializing right now. Luka, I would go next to you. Maybe you can just share what you think. I mean, you have a different perspective living in Austria, but you go back and forth to Belgrade a lot. So how do you see the situation? What do you think? What can you maybe add to what Tatiana said?
First of all, I would like to thank the students, all of the students in Serbia, but also in the region, who gave us the support. I mean, when I say us, I actually have to say them. I'm not studying in Serbia, I'm studying in Vienna. Vedran is actually my professor at the university. So I cannot talk in the name of the students of Serbia. I can only fully support them and then support the thing that they're trying to do. And the thing that they're trying to do is basically something which is extraordinary. I mean, give me one example, and I challenge everybody here in the room, in the last 20 years in our region, that something like this has happened to that amount. Just one example, and I will buy you, I don't know, a beer or a tea or whatever you want. Doesn't matter, but you get my point. So, hood up, kappa dole, or the hat off the head. When it comes to the diaspora, it's a very difficult question to actually reply on. The diaspora has played an interesting role. I can tell my stories about the protests ongoing here in Vienna. It started with 20 people and ended up with approximately, let's say, 1,000 people. I believe that was on the 1st of February, when 1,000 people showed up in front of the Serbian embassy in Vienna. When the protest started in Vienna, it was, as I said, 25 people, and I'm from the Faculty of Political Science. None of people that I know were there. So none of my colleagues from the Western Balkans, none of colleagues from Serbia, young students from Serbia were there. Afterwards, they joined. So what does this show us? It shows us that the courage has risen also within the youth, the diaspora youth in Vienna, and that the anxiety and the fear of being tracked and followed has fallen, which is a very important thing, because the anxiety that the people have in Serbia to be followed, and also that the people have in Vienna, Graz, Salzburg, Linz to be followed, has fallen. So it's slowly starting to disappear. In Serbia, it disappeared completely. In Austria, it's still disappearing. We have to understand that Austria is a very important country for the Serbian diaspora. We have, I really don't know how many people, but I believe that everybody who is from Austria knows that there is a lot of Serbs in Austria. And I don't want to quote any official numbers because I don't have this data, maybe Vedran has it, but there is definitely a couple of hundreds of thousands officially documented Serbs living in Vienna and in Austria in general. So this diaspora has been shaped by our country, Serbia, because it's only 6 hours ride away from Vienna, let's say. People who live here, who are from Serbia, watch Serbian TV, they hear Serbian radio, they listen to Serbian podcasts, they read Serbian newspapers, and they follow closely what's happening. So this means two things. The diaspora is important in one way, and it is also very important for the ruling party. And they have shown that it is a very important diaspora. I will not comment on how the elections are happening when it comes to elections in Serbia, which is every now and then. The elections, how the elections and how the election process is happening in Austria, I will not comment on it. But one can imagine. It does not differ from the election process in Serbia. And it's happening in a European country in the middle of Europe. So this is something to just keep in mind. I hope that the young students and the young Serbian diaspora here in Vienna, together also with other Western Balkans diaspora, will encourage even more people, not maybe only by protesting on the streets, but also maybe in getting together, forming organizations which are real representations of students, because what we currently have is also questionable. It's infiltrated by certain people. You can all guess which people. So, but to not go to that much into this, I mean, this is all normal. We are used to it. I mean, especially the people in Serbia are used to it. So the diaspora is kind of also used to it. But the main point is, my main point is that the fear of us Serbs, and we are not fearful people, but we became fearful people, is slowly fading away. And this is the main point for us, but also for the region. And the one next thing, and maybe my last sentence for now, is that Vienna, as always, has shown that we are all connected. We might have fought each other 30 years ago. Yes, we did. Unfortunately, we did. But it's not anymore the case. They're helping us. So basically, I have seen an enormous amount of people in protests here in Vienna supporting students, and those people are not Serbs. They're Bosniaks, they're Croats, they're North Macedonians, Montenegrinians, Slovenes. I've seen people all around the Balkans. And this is something which is also very important as a message.
Thanks. Thanks, Luca, for the punchline. You said you're all connected, and this is leads me already then to Larissa. Because you are also diaspora, but you're from Bosnia-Herzegovina. And I think what is also interesting is what we are witnessing right now in Serbia, not only in Serbia, because there is also something going on in North Macedonia, and in the past also in Bosnia-Herzegovina. We remember also the protests when it came to hydropower installations, etc. I think what is interesting is that we normally think of the region when we travel there that the biggest problem is that all of them want to emigrate. They're very apathetic. They are not interested. But this is quite the opposite right now. So, and you are coming also from a very, I would say, social activist atmosphere. So I would be interested in what you heard right now. What would be your take on what is happening, and also what maybe Luca said, that you're all connected. It is a regional issue maybe, and what does it mean for you?
First of all, thank you also from my side. I think Luca already mentioned many very important points, and what you said, I do believe that we're all connected, and I think this is what the students in Serbia are doing right now. You're giving us hope, and I mean, I say us also as now speaking from diaspora, speaking from my point, you're giving us hope that people, first of all, I think often what you said, that if you talk about the Western Balkans, people say young people just want to emigrate, but the thing is that often you don't feel like you have hope in your country. And you are young people who said, this is our country, we want to have a better tomorrow here, and we're going to fight for it. And it's incredibly brave, because you need to be, because of course you're fearful, and you need to fight against this fear. You need to get to this point. And I think a lot of people, especially in the diaspora, kind of, you like having your home country staying the way it is. And often staying the way it is also, I think, when we come to TV or to propaganda that is coming from the Western Balkan countries, often a presence is portrayed that doesn't even exist. It's this idea of the way it was before, because yes, things have happened, but we also used to all live together happy. So it can all exist, and we didn't all always used to fight each other. And I think especially here in the diaspora, we're all living together. We're all going to the same clubs, we're all going to the same demonstrations, and we're all fighting for the same idea. Sorry, I missed my point.
No, it's perfectly fine. So what do you think? I mean, what do you think from your perspective, what is happening? And you said that, I think you did not miss the point, but maybe you can reflect additionally on what you hear, for example, from Bosnia-Herzegovina or for the regional countries. Okay. How do they, maybe you heard something, how do they perceive what is happening? And because you do have connections also there, so maybe you can also reflect on that.
Thank you. It was a long day. No, but what I think is super important is we can see that the whole region, because these are regional issues that we need to talk about, because it is not just one country. We always talk about the Western Balkans in one part, so we also need to look at it regionally. And you're bringing hope to not just Serbia, but also the region. And I think it's showing that you can have a protest, because we had these moments, as mentioned before, we had those moments of uprising, but not a real change came then, and it didn't really materialize. And for example, if I look at what I have done so far, we've done a lot of activism from the diaspora. That means from Austria, we did activism about Bosnia and Herzegovina. And what was really different in our case, we just did it from here, and we didn't have connections to the people in Bosnia and Herzegovina. And this is very different, I think, with the student protests now. It's a very transnational community. It's a very intergenerational community. I mean, us Gen Zs were nice enough to give Vedran a space here. Because I think young people can be the ones who are pushing for changes in politics, definitely, and in society. But we need older generations to come with us, and we need to give them the space for this. And I think this is super important. If we see videos from the streets in Belgrade saying, my child is now going to the streets again, and 20 years ago I went to the streets. I mean, these things are happening again and again. And especially now I want to mention something, because we had this issue with diaspora wanting to be active, but often being very nationalistic. And that is why we started a platform now in Vienna as well, which is called IDEMO, which is kind of an idea of Friends of the Western Balkans, where people can come together and fight for progressive, pluralistic democracies. Because we do have democracies in the region, but maybe not the kind of democracies that I would like to see. I mean, we have to ask ourselves the question, what do we want? And I think we are a platform of people who are fighting for pluralistic democracies based on human rights, where protest is a part of it. I think the protests you have now, but usually having protests and being able to take criticism is seeing that you have a healthy democracy. And I think this is important. And today is also, then I'll stop. And I think also because we are here in Austria, I was born and raised in Austria, today is also an important day for Austrians. 60 years ago today, Ernst Kirchweger was killed, who was the first person who was killed after the Second World War because of right-wing National Socialistic violence, National Socialism violence. So I think this is something that we are carrying with us as well, and something that we can see still happening in other countries, and we should also take account of it.
Thank you, Larissa. Vedran, you know the region very well. You have been analyzing what is happening in all the Western Balkans or Southeastern European countries, but especially Serbia, since we talk a lot about Serbia right now, used to be a front runner for when it comes to European Union integration. And I would say it is by far a long time ago, and it's not a front runner any longer. So maybe you can reflect a little bit on how difficult the whole atmosphere is for protests like this to happen, because if we talk about media freedom, which is more or less not existing in Serbia, I mean, there is a couple of independent media still ongoing, but we know how Vučić and his regime is actually playing the media, how often he is on video and television, etc. So the whole atmosphere, the political atmosphere, is very difficult in this time of this huge ongoing mass protest in general. This is one thing. And the other thing is, I would like also to hear from you from this European union point of view. Hannes mentioned it in the beginning of the speech, that many are also frustrated that they have been quite silent. I mean, Watako said something. She mentioned media freedom, etc. But in general, I would say they have been very reluctant. And I think this is because of geopolitical elements, because of the war, what is going on. And everything is very much geopoliticized. So this is also true when it comes to this whole enlargement process. So it's a very difficult situation in which now these young people are actually taking onto the streets, but still with the support of many professors. We cannot forget about that as well. But maybe you can just like give us your analysis on what do you see, what challenges do they having, but also what prospects do you see from what is happening right now?
Thanks a lot, Stephanie. I think a lot of questions, but let's pick it up from this kind of first question that was referring to the character of the Vučić regime. I think what Serbia has been in the last 12 years is actually a primary example of autocratization of a society from within, which became from year to year more brutal and more repressive. And when you look at the international studies and research, you see actually that Serbia, while it was a frontrunner, and I'll come back to it, it has autocratized almost on a global level the most. So joining the club of Turkey and Hungary and previously Bolsonaro. So I think what we have seen here is evolution of a regime model that in the literature we describe as competitive authoritarianism. So where you pretend that you have institutions and procedures in place, you pretend that there are free elections, but at the same time you establish a very brutal one-party rule or one-person rule almost in this case, that is actually occupying or taking over all possible spheres of the society. So Vučić has managed actually to simply take over the possession of cultural institutions, media institutions entirely, economy, business communities, compromise students, compromise, I mean, even kindergartens. And this is a kind of an overwhelming a kind of a power of this competitive authoritarianism. What the competitive authoritarian regimes and despots or autocrats do share, all of them, is this kind of two-sided rhetoric. So, I mean, and when we come to the European Union, so you will always have this kind of a friendly face of him sitting in discussing with Ursula von der Leyen, promising all what you want to hear, lying, but at the same time, when he comes back home, showing the real face. So having said that, I also have to mention that we find ourselves in times where this kind of authoritarian bullying alliances are actually increasing and growing. So we have, I mean, what Trump is actually doing right now to the United States of America is an autocratization of the United States. I mean, there is even a question that we could rightly pose whether this is taking the US towards some type of a modern dictatorship. And here we see from Trump to Russia, from Istanbul and Ankara to Belgrade, from Hungary to Bratislava, which is just around the corner, but not to forget also to Vienna, to parts of Germany, to parts of France, to parts of Italy, where we have a kind of a mushrooming, or not mushrooming, a kind of signatures of a new authoritarian alliance, almost proto-fascist or fascist to a certain extent, where those guys like Vučić feel encouraged. I mean, they just, I mean, all the time wait, what is Trump going to say, etc., etc. So that brings me to my second point of student protests. I think having said that and having all that kind of an amount of control and repression that is in place, it's even more impressive that the students now take over. And what do? I think it's really a kind of inspiration for the European Union to a certain extent, without glorifying the protests. I mean, we could go into kind of what is going on in the kind of a broad student framework. I mean, we also have discussions in Serbia about nationalism, how the students refer to the 90s. There is the question of how you deal with Srebrenica, with stuff. So there are certain ideological questions that probably are gonna be on the agenda once the students progress. But I think what is important to underline, there is a new urgency in their claims there is a new energy, a new enthusiasm. There are new emotions, and when we speak about new emotions, this is the notion of hope, and not a very naive hope. That's a kind of a practical hope, a hope that materializes through practices, through going to the streets, to doing something. There are new methods. I think this is really important to underline. These public assemblies and plena, so-called plena, where students come together, make decisions, deliberate, discuss, and actually practice democracy, are paving way to a different type of the political. And I think that needs to be the final goal. And now, I mean, the last point when it comes to the European Union. Look, I mean, the EU, I mean, there's this usual joke. I mean, the EU was pretending that it wants to include the countries of the Western Balkans. Guys like Vučić and all the others were pretending that they want to join the European Union. Now this facade, I think, has disappeared. It's quite clear that Vučić never ever would like to join the European Union. Otherwise, in the European Union, he'll be in jail and not running his country, or in jail in some kind of another institution. So there are a set of institutions where he could fit nicely. But the point here is that the EU, in this kind of a double pretending, and while busy with other crises and processes, etc., lost the appetite for the enlargement that was before the Russian aggression on Ukraine. Then enlargement came back as a geopolitical necessity, but not a really serious one when it comes to the Western Balkans. And what the EU did in the meantime, it lost the traction, it lost the credibility. This is why you don't see EU flags on the streets of Belgrade. You see them on the streets of Chisinau or in the streets of Tbilisi. But then the question is, how long are you going to be seeing those kind of flags on those streets? In a way, I mean, you could just do it in a brutal way and say the EU has betrayed, to a certain extent, the pro-democratic forces. But if you do it more nicely, you could say there was a lot of transactionalism, of stability, hoping that elected leaders, even though the elections are not free and fair, will deliver whatever, Kosovo, or will be able to pacify Dodik, or will deliver in the future lithium, or whatever you take. And I think this kind of EU's game has, or is slowly coming to an end. I think when, I mean, still the messages for Ursula von der Leyen and Kos have changed a bit. But what I hear from Brussels, and what you can hear, that now the question in Brussels is not anymore how can we pacify Vučić and what should we do. The question is more and more, many people are asking, what are we going to do when Vučić is taken down by the students? How are we going to reposition? So I think there is an urgency and a necessity also for the Austrian foreign policy and for the foreign policy of member states to stop this kind of a cuddling with Vučić. There is no need whatsoever to cuddle with Vučić. You can cuddle with other guys. That's much nicer. And by cuddling with Vučić, you are losing the agency of those young people with all the kind of differences within the movement. But you are losing an agency of people that really are interested in democracy, are interested in a pluralistic society with all the kind of difficulties and difficult issues. Yes.
Thank you, Vedran. Yes, I agree. I think this kind of transactionalism is something maybe the European Union cannot afford any longer. If you look at what is going on even beyond the Western Balkans, beyond Russia, etc., in the whole world, because this is another big topic. I will do a very, very quick second round before we go into the audience, and I would also like then first to give also the floor to Boris and maybe even Tara if she wants to come in, or Araban. I don't see him, but he's somewhere here. Yes, I see his hand. But maybe my question would be, Tatjana, maybe you can just give us also a little bit more of how you actually are able to mobilize. I mean, what are you doing? How are you able to mobilize? Is it mostly via social media? That would be one question. The second question is there anything similar to fear, because the Vučić regime is quite, I would say, known on cracking down on such initiatives, and that even includes violence, and it is sometimes very hidden violence because it cannot do it very, very publicly because the European Union at least is looking a little bit, I think. So, but nevertheless, is there something like fear, or that would be my second question. And my third question is, what is the best scenario from your point of view, where those protests could go? Because the protests should obviously not go on forever. At one point, you need also to be able to resume your studies again, because you cannot study these days. You're more or less very much giving your time to these protests. So I know 3 questions, but yeah. I take full of opportunity since you're here.
Yeah, thank you. I'm going to try to pack all that as short as I can. The first question about mobilization of people, we are trying everywhere, every way. First of all, we have personal connections. We are trying to engage our families, our grandmothers and fathers. That's maybe the hardest one to do. But also of mothers, fathers, you know, they also know people that know people. It goes really traditional way, actually, very natural. Social media is the biggest part. We have profiles on social media for every faculty that is in the blockade. For example, our faculty has, I think, 25,000 followers, and our faculty counts, let's say, 4,000 students, which is not that big. So also what are we trying to do now is to invite everyone into this fight. I want to actually say that these are not just student protests anymore. We are trying to organize it the best way we can, and we are doing it. We are inviting for the protests and going out on the streets. But these are now also citizens' protests and students' protests. With that, we are inviting all of the people to organize themselves into the public assemblies, which are called zborovi. And in Serbia, that's legal with the law and the constitution. That's what we are trying to do on the local communities right now, and not just local communities, but everyone that has a problem and that has a demand should go out with it, as we went out with our demands, as we called out all the institutions that are not working in Serbia. Some other people, as let's say doctors or lawyers or farmers, let's say, also could call out their institutions that are also not doing their job. As students of media studies, we are really trying to highlight that media is catastrophic in Serbia now. We have full media darkness right now, and there is no media freedom in Serbia. So those are some ways we are trying to mobilize people. Also, the fact is that being a student is cool now, and that's very funny. Students do not have pressure on being bureaucratic, being fully serious in that way. We are messing around a little bit. We have protests that have goofy names and stuff like that. I think that's also helpful in this movement. So that is maybe my answer to your first question. The second one was, I'm sorry.
Fear. If you're fearful that something might happen from the regime, because we do know it's still, I think, is it 1 million people are in the SNS party, or like 800,000, which is
it's a lie.
Huge amount for us. 7 million country. Or
Yeah. Well, I must agree with Luca that fear was much bigger than now. There is fear, though, still. The biggest fear is actually individual. I can fear for myself when I'm out on the street, if some rock will hit me from the sky, or a sound cannon. We also had that type of attack. So that is like individual fear. I can fear for my mom, for example, if she will lose her job because of me stepping out and putting my face and the name on my opinion, actually, you know. But the fear is definitely raising down. The fear is there, you know. it's on the individual level, definitely. But we are targeted. There is so many lies about every one of us, personally, individually. There are pressures like teachers and professors not getting their salary. That is maybe the fear that is biggest. How people are going to react to this situation that we made. That's maybe the biggest fear right now, and the biggest fear is this not working and not going the way that we want it to go, and not having the state that we want tomorrow, because we gave everything we have. We are in this movement, in these protests, with our soul and body and all of our spare time and not spare time. And if this doesn't work out the way we want it, me personally, I have no reason to stay in Serbia, and I want to stay in Serbia. That is my country where I was born, my family is there, that is my wish. And I think my biggest fear is this not working. So maybe Boris would like to add something to this.
You can get a mic. This is no, it's a cable, Michelle.
Hello, everyone. Hello, everyone.
Can you stand up, maybe?
Yeah, okay, yeah. I can.
This is Boris. This is Boris. He's also a
hello.
From Novi Sad.
We are doing everything to stay in our country, and I hope so. We will. What I say, government try make us on. Bad person, like we don't wanna go to school and we don't work. How we time to across the street every hour and something like that. But we recognize the huge problem. Huge problem is system. Our system is dysfunctional, and we must do something on this way. We trying to make a system better, and we know that if we changing something on the top, we didn't do anything, because there be something new people and what we do. And that's what I can say now.
I just wanted to add the main move of the Vučić regime and government, is the violence, and we are used to it. We know that he will always play his card on violence, and we are used to it. But it's normal to be afraid of violence. It's normal that we, on 15th of March, students that organized protests took off their vests and called it the end when the violence started. Some had different opinions on that. Some said, you're weak because you did that. But I don't think so. It's normal to be afraid of the sound cannon. It's normal to be afraid of beating up and stuff like that. But I think that we usmerili smo. We directed that fear in our energy, actually, here. And the energy is something that is very important in every aspect of this. We are 4 months working as apes on this. So we just hope that it will be the best it can.
Thank you. I will do a very, very quick question to the three of you, but then because I also want to give you the opportunity to enter the discussion and to have a full half an hour at least for that to happen. But maybe Luca, maybe you can reflect on possible scenarios. So maybe what is the biggest challenge and what is maybe the biggest hope from your point of view? And maybe this is also the question then for the two of you, so you can already think about it and say something else then, Luca.
Yeah. Wow. The outcome, well, I'll try to be objective as much as I can and not a fan or an activist, which is always a bit tough. But What we have witnessed on the 15th of March is over 300,000 people on the streets of Belgrade. I was with my father on those protests. He is a former diplomat, and he was also on the 5th of October on the protests, 2000, when they overthrew Milosevic. And I asked him, hey, Dad, in comparison, we were not walking, we were trying to kind of get around and manage. He had a heart attack a couple of years ago, so I was kind of, worried that he will get a bit too carried with the protest. So I was like, hey, let's go a bit to the side. And I asked him, tell me, in comparison to the 5th of October, and he's a very realistic person. He never over-exaggerates with number and so on. And he told definitely less people on the 5th of October on 2000. So what they managed, without being a political party, without having Đinđić, without having all of the opposition, without being bombed in 1999 by NATO. Don't forget, Milosevic was overthrown also because NATO bombed the Federal Republic of Yugoslavia. This brought the people outside on the streets as well. They realized, what the hell is going on? Why are the bombs falling? So they managed to do everything with their own will and their own power, with creativity. So to demand of the students anything else is absolutely unacceptable. This is the first thing. The second thing, the opposition has to get their own, how to say it politely, they have to get on in their seats, to fasten their seatbelts and to start the engine, and to see how they're going to drive the long way that we have to drive as a country and as a nation. And when I say this, I mean we have to reconcile with 30 years of our history. This is not the job of students, again, and to get the system in order. This is the job of the politicians. So the politicians who have lost trust, because to be honest with you, yes, the government is bad, yes, the ruling party is, and Vučić, I don't like even mentioning his name, has done a lot of awful things, has deteriorated our country, got it back 20, 30 years into history instead of bringing us forward. But the opposition, don't forget, the Democratic Party, together with their coalitioning partners, has ruled the country from 2000 up until 2012. Did they deliver? Did they deliver? They did not deliver. Those are still mainly the same people being represented in the opposition parties. We need new faces, we need new energy, we need the new politicians to learn from the students how to motivate the people and to actually bring the change. And they can bring the change only through parliaments, only through institutions. We don't need blood on the streets. We really don't need it. We as a nation have bleeded a lot. And I will not go into our friends and our countries in the region because it's a long way to the top. But we as a nation really have to get it sorted out. That's the reason. So the main point, just to not talk too much, is the students will not and shall not do it. The politicians have to do it. The students could, in a very interesting and maybe creative way, help the politicians if they want to. But we cannot demand this from the students. So in the end, I would say it's the job of politics to bring the change. And one thing, we don't need the EU. I'm sorry, I'm in favor of the European idea. I'm a European. I've been brought up in Athens, in Belgrade, and in Vienna. I cannot consider myself completely Serbian, right? But still, the EU, we don't need you. I mean, they don't need you. Because it's simply our job, it's our country. Nobody else can fix this problem. It's us, and it's solely our responsibility. Because if we do it alone, it is the right way to do it. We will be the ones who will take we will be accountable for everything. We will not be able to point fingers, oh, they did the job wrong. No, we did it wrong. And this is what we miss as a nation. To see ourselves in the mirror and to say, my friend, I have done a lot of bad things. Let's change myself. And this is what Zoran Đinđić said. Let's first change ourselves and then look outside and bring the change with our positive change, show the people how it is done. Sorry. Again, it's activism.
Thank you, Luca. Larissa, your points, biggest challenges, biggest hope.
I mean, we have the hope sitting next to me. Challenges, I think there's many challenges, and I cannot tell you how the future will look. I think this is what you need to do, but I think some points we need to look out for. Firstly, if you say we don't need the EU, but the system Vučić needs the EU, because I mean, they are getting a lot of funds from the European Union. There is money in there. So I think this is something we should not just look away on and forget, because a system can only, the way it is working right now is because there is a whole system behind it. And that is why we need systemic changes in especially Serbia, but in I think most of the countries in the region. And I think this is why this Serbia could be a start for the region to rethink. I mean, not all countries are facing the same issues, but the European Union is a factor. Maybe not a factor in the sense of at the protests too much, but money is important and they are giving a lot of money to the system. And lithium definitely is also a factor, but it's also a debate for something else. But why is the system Vučić being supported? Why is nobody saying anything? And not just the European Union, but also the international community is quite quiet on it. This is something we need to think of. And another thing, I think democracy, I mean, it's easy to say for me now growing up in Austria, but democracy takes time. Democracy needs to be learned. It doesn't come from one day to the other. And your politicians have been working on taking away democracy from you for decades. So now you need to do it again and start also from a young generation up. I don't think that everything is going to be better from tomorrow, but I think this is why we are here. We are trying to build broad coalitions and to help you and to find our allies within the European Union, within the international community and here. And I think all that we can do is support you as much as we can.
Thanks, Larissa. Larissa said democracy can be learned. Unfortunately, can also be unlearned, as we are witnessing. So this is also something I think we need to take into account and need to be very aware of. And there are many tools which are favorable to that. But Vedran, what would be your take on this? Do you think, what would be the possible scenarios? Do you think, and Ivan Vejvoda said that to me when I did a podcast with him on that issue, he said, this is what's happening right now in Serbia is the beginning of the end of the regime of Vučić. It doesn't mean that it's going to happen tomorrow, but it will, at one point, it will fail. Would you agree on that, or what would be your assessment before we go to the audience?
Yeah, I think what Tatjana said today at the workshop was very simple and very strong. There is no back now. I mean, there is no back now for you, and there is no back for the regime. I mean, Vučić certainly, and the regime has passed the peak of its power. So he can't go back to this kind of a situation before, like a few years ago, rigging elections a bit, promising the EU something, hugging Macron, selling, buying, doing. I think there is no way to go back to that one. Okay, but that doesn't change the situation. So, and even Vejvoda is certainly right. Of course, there is no way back. But then the question is, how long can it take? And certainly, what we should not forget, this regime has turned full-fledged criminal. I think when you use a sound weapon against your population, against the population that is standing on the streets peacefully, I mean, it was in the middle of this 15 minutes of being quiet for the victims of Novi Sad. So that means that you are not only criminal, that you are evil, simple as it is. So you are ready to use violence to protect your punct. So basically, there is a danger that Serbia could, or that Vučić could turn full-fledged authoritarian and take a path of some other countries like Belarus, Russia scenario or something. Turkey is a bit difficult and different. I think Turkey we will need to differentiate, because Turkey has a strong democratic tradition and a strong oppositional party, which we do not have in Serbia. So, but he could, and he is ready to use violence. I mean, he is ready to use violence. He has proved he is using violence. The only question is actually what is happening on the global and the European level. I do think that he watches carefully, or tries to see the signs from DC. He is waiting to see what's going to happen between Russia and the United States of America. He is waiting to see if Trump will be ready to betray, as he betrayed Ukrainians, or he is betraying right now Ukrainians, if he will be ready to betray all the democratic forces in the Western Balkans, including Albania, including Bosnia and Herzegovina, including North Macedonia, etc., etc. Serbia is not a single case. We have many small, bigger autocrats all around the region. region. So actually, this is what he is carefully observing. He's also watching what the European Union is telling him. I think he is not naive. He is not Belarus. He's not close to Putin. This is a country in the middle of Europe. This is a country that depends on the Western investments, on trade. Yes, China has increased its involvement, but still, this is a European country. And all the young people, they wanna, if Serbia turns dystopian, Tatiana, Boris, and the others are going to go to Vienna and to Berlin and not to Moscow and to Beijing. So I think this is something that we should not be too naive about this one. And here comes, of course, the question of what is the utopian horizon or real utopian horizon for Serbia. I think when you bring hope, once the hope is born, you can't kill hope. So I think there is no one that can kill Tatiana's, Jovana's, Milana's, or whoever hope. I mean, if once you have hope, I mean, it can be suppressed, but it can't be killed. So this is here to stay. The methods are here to stay. The quest for the different type of political, which is non-hierarchical, which is not authoritarian, which is not despotian, which is not full of violence, it's out there. Now it comes actually to the forces inside, but also to the forces outside. To see how to navigate this kind of a universe of the new. And I think as Serbia and the Western Balkans, unfortunately, this is a semi-peripheral region of the globe. It's a bit sidelined. It feels everything that is happening on the global level. And I think here Europe, contrary to you, look, I think Europe and the European Union, which is by itself right now in the process of reconfiguring or finding out what it's wanna be in the future. I think in this kind of a global new repositioning of the European Union, given the Trump's ludicrous policies from the States, I think the Western Balkans and semi-peripheral regions are going to play a role. So if that game is lost by the European Union, then I think there is a danger that the game of democracy is going to be lost in the Western Balkans too. So I think we need to create those kind of a transnational alliances, work towards different type of a notion of political, where Serbia certainly can inspire a lot. And what Ivan, I think, said once, as Serbia in the 90s with Milosevic was the harbinger of nationalism, hatred and ethnic cleansing in the Western Balkans, we can now hope that Serbia could be a harbinger or messenger of something new that can also incite changes in the European context, which will be great, of course.
Thank you, Vedran. Yes, I think we do have time now to get a couple of questions. I will collect a couple. We start there, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, and we can have a second round. Maybe you can introduce yourself briefly, and if the question is addressed to only one person, please indicate which person that is.
Hi. My name is Grisa Hasa, and I'd like to speak here as a former student organizer. I come from Albania. In 2018-2019, we had massive student protests in the country, but unfortunately, they did not reach the same scale as those of our peers in Serbia, whom I wholeheartedly support and hope they achieve what we were unable to at the time, which is eventually regime change. I don't have a question, I have more of a comment actually. There's like 2 points that I wanted to make. One, I find the current phase of the protest very interesting, which is this shift from student assemblies to communal or citizen assemblies, because I think that this is also a symbolic shift in the society from a dysfunctional parliamentary democracy towards practices of direct democracy. I think this is very important from 2 perspectives. One, from the perspective of social movements, because it exemplifies a shift in how people mobilize and exercise collective power, trust in grassroots and participatory decision-making over traditional forms of hierarchical leadership. And from the second perspective, in relation to the outcome of the protests, if the citizens continue resisting in such a way and eventually bypassing elections or cooperation with with the opposition parties or opposition groups, I think not only this will further exemplify the crisis of legitimacy, but it can also open up like new pathways for dismantling Aleksandar Vučić regime through alternative forms of political organization. There was one point, and please bear with me, like in the second one, I just wanted to make like a small intervention because I heard since the beginning the use of the word like transnationalism and also speaking about protests in the region, and I don't think I agree with using the term transnationalism because I think that that is lacking, because for there to be like a transnationalist movement in the region currently, you have to have a ground for that to happen. Like there is no communication, first of all, between different groups and civil society organizations currently who are organizing protests. Besides that, another element, another important element is the fact that in the current protests, despite how inspiring and motivational and important and good there have also been nationalistic and chauvinistic elements. I mean, I know that this is not the main tone of the protests, but it is there, and I think it's also important to point that out, because it's precisely this which creates a problem, you know, like to build bridges and to communicate, for example, with young peers in Kosovo, but also in Albania, to try to support the student movement in Serbia fully and not approach it with skepticism. I don't know, perhaps maybe somebody would like to comment on that. I would really appreciate it. And thank you very much. And particularly, thank you for the work that you're doing and for being here and presenting the work to us.
Thank you, very valuable comments. There was actually one just behind, so yeah.
Hi, I'm Giorgio Constandi. I am a Bosnian war researcher and freelance journalist. Thank you for the panel discussion. I thought it was really interesting. I do have a question that's long and slightly uncomfortable, and it kind of builds on what Gressa was saying. There have been some criticisms of elements of the protests, the protest movement, due to this presence of nationalistic elements. There was footage, for example, that emerged showing Serbian veterans of the 1990s Yugoslav wars marching alongside or as part of the protest. And I think it was the Serbian human rights activist Nataša Kandić, who was one of the first voices from Serbia to vocally criticize this and ask some very important questions. And so I have a two-part question in response to that. Firstly, do people on the panel, in particular Tatiana from Serbia, but also Ulka from the diaspora, do people think that the protest movement has a responsibility to make sure that it is proceeding in a way that doesn't potentially alienate marginalized communities in the region? And if people do think that the protests have that responsibility, how?
Thank you. We had a question here. George, do you take the microphone? Oh, it's in the, yes.
I'm Harold. I've been living in Vienna. Oops. Yeah, I'm Harold, been living in Vienna for 21 years. I'm originally from Chicago, and just like to underline something Vedran said about the potential for this student protest to show how to resist autocracy, not only in the Balkans, but in North America too. But I have just a very small question. How do the protesters regard the Otpor and the anti-violence protests? That was 2 or 3 years ago. There's a big Protiv Nasilje, and what did they learn from that? Those two protests.
In the back, yeah, right behind you.
Hi, thanks very much. I'm Lawrence Kettle. I'm an EU security and defence expert with the Austrian Institute for European and Security Policy. First of all, I just want to say to the students here who are actually participating in those protests, well done. You know, I'm a millennial, and we millennials feel kind of protective over the younger generation. So anybody here in the older generations who say, oh, you know, the young are just obsessed with TikTok and avocado on toast, I think the protests are a clear example that they're not. And indeed that they are more politically active than they actually are. So first of all, well done. My question is directed more towards Tatiana about the organization of the protests. History has shown that student protests that are able to reach out to different portions of the society are most successful. One example that comes to mind is in the 1960s in France against Charles de Gaulle, when they managed to get factory workers and then hospital workers and then everybody else on side, it actually caused massive changes. And Charles de Gaulle actually had to leave the country temporarily and then come back and then rethink his policies. So my question is, you did mention that in Serbia, you know, you talk to your parents, they talk to their grandparents and so on. What is the potential of the protest movement to reach out to factory workers, to different portions of society, the medical profession, whatever, to show that the corruption is not just about a bridge issue, it's not just a student protest issue, that dealing with the corruption of Serbia can actually improve the entire society and directly impact them? Thank you.
Thank you. We take the last one here, and then we'll make another round. I see the hand in the back as well, but
I don't have a question. I just have a comment for what you both said. I know that from some, usually in the region, then became some sayings about its nationalistic messages and so on. But I would say it's rather what we call it hare and egg. When you have a gathering of so many people from different walks of life, it's completely normal, and it's something that is related to country. It's completely normal that you have people that are wearing their flag, their traditional wearings, and so on. Another aspect that we do have the people who were participating in the war during the 90s, yeah, they were sent by the government. They are not integral part of the community of the student-led protest. And I also have to say that people very support students, and they cherish how their vision, and also they do not have any that kind of a tendency. So I don't see, as I'm following that and I've been involved into protests, I think it's maybe a misunderstanding, because yeah, it's normal that you have those kinds of people and that kind of, you know, items and so on. But on the other side, you do not hear any nationalistic messages. You don't have it. For instance, it's completely normal when you have so many people and it's related to government, and people want to have, you know, a better government and send some message to the government. Yeah, that's true. And it's normal that you will have someone with a flag, Kosovo is Serbia. And I also participated in a protest here in front of the embassy of Serbia. And yeah, there were people with that flag and they were screaming Kosovo is Serbia. But just to tell you, they were a minority, and other people said, please stop shouting, this is not the message, this is not the issue we are dealing with, and people stopped. So yeah, there are some pictures and maybe there are narratives they are spreading, but I think they are not on the right side.
Thank you. I think we go back to the panel for now, but we can do a second round, and I already noted down a couple of people, but most of the questions were addressed to you, so maybe you can reflect on them.
Yeah, well, I will start with the stuff that we talked about now, and thank you for explaining. That is actually what I was intending to say. Our demands, we have 5 of them now, are our ideological minimum. There is a lot of people thinking a lot of different things, even on plenums, not only on the protests. As Luca said, we had 25,000 people on the street, and I certainly think that students cannot be responsible for everyone on the street. If someone decided to maybe, I don't know, hit someone else on that street that day, students couldn't be responsible for that. So that is maybe the answer to that. Also, I cannot remember all the questions, and I didn't.
On the organizational front, I mean, the French, the French example, for example.
Yes, I want to say actually a very big thank you to TikTok for everything that is happening, because social media is our informational spot for everything. What we learned from the past protests, That was actually your question, and I still cannot remember the. I'm so sorry. Okay, yes. Well, what we are trying to learn from those protests is the mechanism of defense from the government. They always have the same steps. They always have the same defense. They always go to the violence. They always go to the paid people who will produce violence on the protests. So that is everything that we learned. We maybe learned actually that going into the parliament is not the solution. Also, on the 15th of March, a lot of people expected something like that. And that's when we said, but it's not a solution, and nothing will be changed after that. We, as Boris said, are trying to change the system because it's not working, and we think that Serbia is not the only one where that happens. Also, I wanted to add about the EU. We actually need anyone who can help. We need anyone who also has connections with Vučić right now. That's why we also need diaspora. We were talking about the embassy and people, SNS people in the embassy. That's why we need diaspora to be on our side. And everything that he can do right now is cry about the fact that students actually have honest support from the people, from diaspora, from our parents and everyone else. So, yeah.
Would you like to add something?
I'm sorry, I forgot about some of the questions. So,
workers and everyone's going.
Yes. Yeah, that's actually important for me to say. I think that protests are already somewhere there. We have, as I said, professors and teachers that are in strike for 3 months now. Also, they have so much pressure. They don't get their salary right now. Also, when we are talking about doctors, they are not in strike and never were, but they go out for a 15-minute silence on Fridays that students invited for, and that represent actually the support for students. We have teams for communicating with syndicates. Is that the word? Syndicates, yeah. Trade unions, yes, that are inviting, trying to help those people organize, trying to say why it is important for everything to stop. That was our first message, actually, when we started protests. Everything needs to stop because something big is happening behind our backs, and we haven't turned around yet to see how big it is.
I think there is even an opinion poll that around 70% or more of the Serb population actually supports the protest. So that's quite a high number and figure. So maybe also adding to that question. You wanted to add something?
I just wanted to say a word on nationalism and on this whole topic. I mean, I come from a country which was poisoned and is still poisoned by ethno-nationalism. And unfortunately, the 90s are still stuck with us, even though you were born after the wars. And all of you, the Generation Z, but the wars and the references to the war and the narratives about what the Serbian nation is, what the Croatian nation is, what we are, what we have to be, they have strong roots in the meantime. So it has been like decades of a certain type of framing the past and not dealing with the past. And I mean, first of all, the students did the best. I mean, you can't control every single individual. That's quite obvious. The demands are quite clear and straightforward. That's also quite obvious. You know who the opponent is, you know how to address it. But at the same time, there will be, at a certain point in time, there will be a need to have a kind of a broader ideological discussion. So how does the reference to the past goes with the progress in the future? How, when there is a regime change, there will be open questions. I mean, how is Serbian society positioned? itself to Srebrenica, to the genocide, how the next leadership is going to take up those questions and address it. How do you frame your relations to the neighbors, to Kosovo in particular, to Bosnia and Herzegovina? I mean, we do know that Vučić is using this repertoire of nationalism to mobilize all the time and to also attack the students by referring to whatever. But I think the point is, in a long term, to open up those questions, even though this is not only up to the students. I think the students have the energy that they have, but it's also kind of a broader societal discussion. So you can't move forward, as the Austrian society was not able to move forward even until the 80s, when Franz Wernicke was the first one to say that Austria was not the first victim of the National Socialism. So there will be a time when someone needs to stand up and say that was a shame in the 90s, that was a repression and a brutal authoritarian regime that killed so and so many people. So I think this is not right now something that needs to be on a broader horizon, but for the purpose of the sanity of the movement, for the sanity of the mind of the students, I think there will be also a need for that next step, which will then enable something that we have been observing since the beginning of the protest. We do see a small transnational, trans-ethnic mobilization. There will even people on the streets of Pristina, or I mean, Arban Mehmeti told us today that some members of the Albanian, Kosovo-Albanian community in Berlin would go and march with Serbian students and people in Berlin. So there are roots, and I think there is a genuine solidarity in the Western Balkans, including Albania, among the protests, among positive and progressive forces. But in order to move forward and to enable those transnational and trans-ethnic energies to flourish, there will be a need for repositioning in many terms, I think, as we move along. Right now, the urgency is on something different, and I think the students are quite aware of that.
Is it important? Okay, because we do still want to have a second round, but please.
Just to add on this, also on the streets in Sarajevo, we have people going out. You have also here in Vienna, on the 15th, you also saw people at the protests with Bosnian flags. So there is this momentum and they're using it. And I think what is very important, I mean, this example of you need to be ready to face the past. And I feel like what the students are doing as well, they're opening up really hard discussions and making society ready to face the past.
Yeah, exactly. I agree with that. And just to come back about nationalistic symbols and what one could have seen on the protests. Yes, of course, you have it everywhere. I mean, you had flags of Yugoslavia, you have communist symbols also across the protests, yet nobody talks about them. But however, let's keep it simple. Out of 350,000 people, at least, this is the number, the minimal number of people who attended, I was personally there. I've seen 3 questionable flags. And I mean, this showed me, and I am generally very critical of my country's past, this showed me that this society has grown up and that it faced already. We hadn't maybe had it come from the top, the reconciliation, but we kind of started doing it with ourselves by talking with our friends and families. You have people joining from Novi Pazar, people who have lived in our country for decades, not feeling as members of our society. Now they started feeling as members of our society. You just look at the scenes of how they were welcomed in Belgrade when Belgrade was welcoming students. And last but not least, the veterans. It is important to state this. Yes, of course, it comes with a lot of questions and about maybe their views and so on, but let's not put everybody in the same box. It takes a lot of courage if you're a veteran in Serbia to go out and to support the opposition, because the veterans and all of their organizations are framed by nationalism, by Vučić, by the Radical Party, and everybody who was actually committing those war crimes and pulling people in this to do. So to have people actually from the army, representatives of the former army, or however you want to call it, join the other side is something fascinating. And I have to respect it. These people were called in when the duty was to be called in. They could not say, hey, you know what, my friend? I cannot join, the army because NATO is bombing and I don't support this, because the borders were closed. You were haunted on the streets. it was a must to go and to defend the country. So it's a very sensitive topic, but again, I understand your question and I understand your view a lot. The issue is just we also have to respect those people who had the courage to come out and to defend those people. Because believe me, on the other side, the people who were there to beat them up, who were prepared to beat them up and to throw stones from the roofs, I have seen the people, I have pictures on my phone. The veterans were there, and the veterans stepped in when the students took off their vests and when there was panic on the street because this idiot used a sonic weapon against his own people.
Thank you. We're already quite strong, but Tara, please. And then we have Ulrike, then we had some lady in the back, one and Christina, and then we need to close it. But we're going to stay afterwards, and the people are going to stay, so please feel free then still to engage in a discussion. We have wine and snacks afterwards.
Thank you, Stephanie. I just wanted to start. Hi, everyone. My name is Tara Tepovac. I'm a researcher at the Institute for Philosophy and Social Theory at the University of Belgrade. Just flew in this morning, and for another reason, but I'm really happy to be here, and I wanted to thank Stephanie and Vedran and all the panelists first for organizing this. I think for me, it's extremely important to have a platform which is enabling our students and their voices to be heard beyond the borders of Serbia. So great, thank you for this, because I remember this was the place where we started talking about it in December last year when I was here, and it was one of the first places in Vienna where you could hear the topic of the protests in Serbia, so thank you for that, and thank you for the great inputs of the panelists. I really enjoyed to listen, and I was feeling very proud. So maybe I would just use the opportunity to reiterate maybe 3 points. I have a good news, a bad news, and something which is like an appeal.
Can you end with the good news?
Perhaps, why not? Yeah, why not? I will start with the tough topic, I guess. And so I guess the tough thing that I would like to say is that Tatiana is being very modest. She was explaining everything in an excellent way, but she's being really modest about the amount of unprecedented changes that the students are actually making in the society, but also about the repression that we are facing at the moment in Serbia. So maybe I would like to use the chance to reiterate, I'm not sure how much you're getting the information from Serbia, but only last week, apart from the still officially unidentified type of the sonic weapon that was used on the mass protest that Vernon and Luca were mentioning, after 15th of March, last week, we had the dean of the University of Niš, a woman attacked by knife in the broad daylight in public on the protest by another woman. We had 2 students a day before that, 4 students in Novi Sad who were beaten up in the night because they were singing and chanting paroles from the protests. So these students were beaten by a group who's apparently organized, and we can explain it and connect it to the type of the hooligan groups that are being used by different kind of supporters of the regime to try to seed the fear and to put the voices of the students down. So the repression that we are facing, on the one hand, the violence is escalating in Serbia. On the other hand, the professors and the academic community are under huge threat as well. The people in the educational system are not getting their salaries last week. So one part of the salaries of the professors hasn't been also paid to the professors. So I will just make it an illustration. One of the professors from the Faculty of Academic Art from the Fine Art Academy just got his salary for the last month, which was unlegally paid in one dinar and 69, how to call it, so less than €1. His salary for the month was less than €1. And the ways they are actually doing this is completely illegal and unconstitutional. They made a decree by the government, which is currently in the technical mandate. So the bad news is that the repression is actually escalating. And I think that it's important to have this kind of information for everybody who is following what is going on in Serbia. Now, to get to the more optimistic side, because I'm known to be the optimistic one and the positive one, I think that the good news is that despite all the repression which is going on, and despite nobody actually believing that this kind of protest will last this long, we are seeing unprecedented shifts. And I would maybe try to underline it, like why they are unprecedented. They are unprecedented by scale, by scope, by demands and also by the effects that they actually made. By the scale and scope, as Tatiana was saying, I have the most recent data from CRTA. In March only, we had 1,697 protests held in 1 month. This was more than 400 cities, municipalities, and towns across Serbia, so all parts of Serbia. We never witnessed such a thing. So you have the whole society which is actually being mobilized. Apart from students, you have artists being mobilized, workers being mobilized, doctors, lawyers, all parts of the community. This is one of the things. The second thing is the demands. And I think that it's really important to reiterate that this is the first time we're having demands which were so creatively, definitely, but also responsibly, systemically, and very, in an amazing way, articulated. Demands are for systemic changes. They're not trying to change one government with the other. They're trying to actually put the institutions back to work. They're demanding accountability. They're demanding accountability which is political and institutional, and we are all actually, all the citizens we are on protest are actually demanding real democracy, not a facade one. And this is something that, why I'm still optimistic with it. I think that with the way that the protests are being held, with the creativity, the approach of actually long marches in which students were actually marching across the whole country, we have never seen such a thing. This is something that the opposition should be doing. In the part of the pre-election campaigning, we haven't been having such kind of movement ever so far. What they actually managed to do is to break the fear, to break out this kind of cycle of lack of information outside of big cities, to reach the people who were living without information, in fear, and to rebuild the trust among the people that citizens do have the power. And this is the reason why I completely agree with what has been stated on the panel, that there is no going back after this. There is a long way ahead of us, but there is no going back because the fear and the usual systems that the regime was using is no longer existing. And I would finish up with an appeal. I agree that it's great that this is an organic shift which is coming out from Serbia, which is genuinely demanding the rule of law and democracy. This is something that I have been waiting and hoping for the last 10 years. So we do not need Europe for it. But I also think that this fight is not only Serbian fight. I think this is a European fight. I think this is transatlantic fight. And I think we need to deal with it in such a way. So we do not need somebody from the outside coming to step in and to tell us what to do. But as Vedran said, we do need alliances. And I think for the times which are coming, we should perceive it in that way and work on it. Thank you.
Thanks for this inspiring speech, Tara. In the first row, Ulrike, yes. And then afterwards, Christina.
I'm fine with what she already said.
Okay.
Oh, I was, okay. Thank you. I'm Ulrike Lunacek.
The mic is not on. Yeah.
So my name is Ulrike Lunacek. I'm the former Austrian member of the European Parliament that Hannes mentioned at the beginning. So I'll start with the difficult question and then get to an easier one and then get to a big thank you. The difficult one is coming from civil society myself and getting like for 20 years and then getting into politics, party and parliamentary and government politics 25 years ago and leaving that also. My question is, because Luca, you said you don't trust any of the now opposition parties to do anything, or you don't see that they haven't been doing anything. Okay, but I mean, the bit I followed it, I also felt, where are they? Where were they? And the difficult question is, how do you from the student side, but also others, to see a path of transition to change the system? Because changing the system is very big. And it's like Brecht said, you have to go the mühsame Weg auf der Ebene, the tedious path through the plains. This will come. And do you foresee a certain cooperation with what is now the opposition parties, or do you want to form something totally yourself? Do you envision a constitutional assembly to change to the changes that in the constitution are necessary? How do you see that? Or is it something you will do later on? The easy question, I read somewhere that there is a bicycle tour planned to Strasbourg. I love going on my bicycle, but I don't know whether I will join a bit. And I also heard you're coming through Vienna. So can you tell us a bit about that? And also what do you want to do in Strasbourg? Meeting von der Leyen or mostly European parliamentarians? And the big thank you is for two things. First of all, having the courage to transform the fear you all have had or had into positive energy, into hope that you give to so many others. I know that's not easy, but this is, I think, the essence of it. Really overcoming, maybe not totally overcoming, but transforming fear, which is an energy as well, to a positive one. And the second thing is, you mentioned, and that I find very strategically very important, you have now 5 things you are sort of united on. Looking at what unites you and not what separates you. This, if you want to have real change, you have to start there. If you want to have everything change now, it doesn't work. Yeah? So focus on what unites you and not what separates you. So thank you very much for that. And keeping my, not just my fingers crossed, but etc.
Thank you. So Christina still wanted to say something.
Yes, yeah. Yes. I actually want to add what you said, and I also want to insist in something. I actually would say that the system is changing. The problem is the old system is not gone yet and the new system is not here yet. And this is something that's happening everywhere at the same time right now. And in Serbia now we see it, we see your protests, which I really congratulate you on. I was also impressed by the survey of the political activity of the young people in Serbia, so really impressed. And so right now, there is a big transformation in society, many changes, probably never before in society, so many changes happen at the same time and with this speed. And on top of it, everybody is taking part and it affects our lives directly, the lives of citizens, and all at the same time. So, so there's a lot of crisis, and then that's when you see the flaws of the system. And the old system is definitely not giving the answers anymore to the challenges of today. We can't like download the answers from yesterday for today. We need new answers, and we don't know yet which one they are. And so in a way, it's very important. This is like at least what I'm perceiving from a lot of these conversations and protests and changes, that it needs common visions of the future. So change is one thing, but also for what? So since people are very insecure, even if they don't protest, they are insecure. In the survey, it said that actually the most biggest fear was about the job. It was not about personal security, it was not about war, it was about the job. So this shows that actually basic things in the system are not working. And so people need visions for the future. So what are your visions of Serbia? What, in your opinion, should Serbia look like in 10 years? And then maybe I also disagree a bit on the idea that politicians should not be involved. I mean, or sorry, that the politicians should take the responsibility. No, I mean, you are already promoting the change, so you also can give vision. But what is your vision? And then second question, do you have any international examples, strategy-wise? Because there have been a lot of protests currently. I'm thinking of Hong Kong, for example, the flash mobs, the digital connection they had. They were extremely advanced, they were extremely well connected, and they moved a lot of people under a lot of pressure from China. So that was the second question. And yeah, congratulations again and keep it up. Thank you for being here.
We had a last one in the back, the lady, yeah, I promised a long time ago, so yes. Do you see her, George? Yeah.
Danke. Hi, thank you for your interesting perspectives. I'm Alara Yilmaz, I'm a journalist for the Chefredaktion, and I just wanted to ask a question regarding global solidarity to Tatiana. What would be your wish towards students internationally, and especially young people not from the diaspora? How can they support the movement, and have you felt global support or rather ignorance? And I would also like to know from Luca, you said it's our job, it's our country, but how do you see the solidarity or the role of solidarity, for example, in Viennese students in practice?
You mean Austrian students, international students, or Serbian students in Vienna?
I mean all the students in Vienna or the people you know, for example, but my focus is rather on people who don't have a personal connection, not the diaspora. How can people that are not Serbian support the protests, or have you seen a support or rather ignorance?
Thank you. Maybe you're the last one to answer, because this is going to be the final round. We're already way over time. I start with Larissa.
I can start with the last question. I mean, I'm not Serbian and I was at the protest and supporting, and I know a lot of people who are supporting. So I think, yes, there are. I can imagine for a lot of people who do not have a connection at all to the region, have not known that this was happening too much. But I feel like more international, also German-speaking newspapers, magazines. I can imagine you're from the Chefredaktion, you're here because you're going to do something on it. So there's more knowledge now and people are interested in and helping and are in solidarity. I think we just need to spread the knowledge and we need to be the ones who let others know. And then I think the other questions are more...
No one needs to answer all the questions because it was a lot and we only have not too much time. So just pick whatever you think you like to answer. Do you want to say something else?
I think I'm fine with that. I want to say thank you again, and I know there's a lot of questions for you now and a lot of pressure, but you're not alone.
Luca, I take you next. Your final words for today. Not for today, but for the public.
Forever.
For the
My final, maybe it's time to say final words forever. No. Yeah. Mom, here I am alive. What can the students or the Viennese people do for the students of Serbia is the following. As Ulrike mentioned, the students are going to be cycling from Serbia to Strasbourg. What they're going to do, my colleague will explain. However, I can announce that the students will stop in Vienna. And there will be a welcoming party or gathering or a mark of protest, of support for students and so on here in Vienna. Informations for this will still be announced, but it's going to be on the 7th of April this year, obviously, this month. So where it's going to happen, I really don't know. It's a mystery for now, but I believe it's going to happen somewhere, probably Platz der Menschenrechte or Hofburg. Let's see what the students here in Vienna who are organizing it will come up with. But yes, so this is maybe how the, support for... Oh, yeah, of course. Contact me. No, the information can be found on blokada.bec. Bec. This is basically Wien in Serbian. So it's an Instagram page where the students share information about future protests in Vienna, but also gatherings and other, for instance, public panel discussions. So whatever is concerning Serbia and the current situation, if anybody needs help, just come to me after the public panel discussion and I will show you the Instagram page. This is the first thing. The second thing about the political parties and which political party or who could maybe come to the shift and so on, bring the shift towards a better system and so on. I would call out one party. I would call out the party of Zoran Đinđić. I am quoting Đinđić a couple of times today. I personally am impressed with his work, and I believe that as a nation we owe him a lot of respect. But the Democratic Party was always a very traditional party in our political system. It was established a couple of times and it was destroyed a couple of times. It has been diminished by itself, basically, and destroyed by their own members since Vučić took over the power in Serbia in 2012. But this party also holds a huge responsibility for the future. And I do hope and I do believe that the current members of this party and the current elite of this party who are leading the party will understand this and will maybe bring this much needed political support. They're not the only party. Many new parties have emerged in Serbia, which is also good. There are a lot of parties Vedran, maybe you can also touch a bit on this. So definitely there is a change. And just to be clear about the EU, I'm not saying that we don't need absolutely any help. This was not my message. I am always saying I don't want my job to be done by somebody else. I'm more than capable. When I say I mean my country. We are more than capable of doing our job. Of course, this forging new alliances, building new alliances is important. But in the end, thank you. We will do it completely. And then we can all sit together and mark this, let's say, well, excellent example of how democracy shall be initiated in a country one day, hopefully soon. So basically this is it. And never forget the word of the protests, samo pumpaj. Pumpaj, pumpaj, pump, pump, pump. This is what they need to do and this is what they do. Thank you for this. Thank you a lot.
Vedran, maybe you can reflect on all the questions and inputs you heard briefly.
I'm not going to reflect on everything, but just want to say, first of all, something very, very important. I mean, we are in the middle of a tectonic shift. I mean, we can't take Serbia out of the European and global picture. I think, and we need to re-emphasize that one. So we had, like in the 20th century, we will have First World War, Second World War, 1989, probably 2022. The Russian aggression, and now we have 2025 with Trump taking the Oval Office. I think this is one of the biggest tectonic shifts, and we don't need to be too pessimistic to see that this is a totally different type of bullying, destroying, out of rage, out of revenge, smashing the American democracy to the face, which was one of the strongest democracies and used to be one of the strongest democracies in the world. So I think in the middle of this tectonic shift, and as I said, as a Europe of course, is the peace project that has turned now into a project that is facing a war, needs to reinvent itself. And here comes Serbia in. I think Serbia is not going to be the tectonic change for the whole globe, but Serbia and the Serbian protests, if done wisely, continuously, with energy, if also paired with a kind of a political vision, so there is a need for political vision at the end of the street, can be an inspiration for Europe. And this is why I just want to re-emphasize, we can't give up on the European Union. We can't give up on the notion of what Europe is. I mean, Europe, of course, has betrayed, was transactional. Ursula von der Leyen was last year in Belgrade saying to Aleksandar Vučić that he's a dear friend and there was a progress in terms of rule of law. But I think we need, in times of despair, we need to rely on what needs to be reimagined, and I think Europe now has become an island of democracy, institutions, etc., with problems inside. I mean, including the Freedom Party here in Austria, which is on the same line, on the same piece of paper like Trump. But I think these are new alliances of emancipation, of still believing in something that we all believed in a dream of a just society, equal society, solidarity, human rights. And I think this is where Serbian protests really come in, and this is where we need all those alliances. Greet the students, and when they're cycling to Vienna, talk to the Austrian government and the Minister of Foreign Affairs, try to mobilize, but at the same time try also to give some advice and to create something that can be then inspiring for the whole European project in the middle of the darkest moment of the liberal democracy that we've ever seen in the 20th century after the Second World War.
Thank you, Vedran. Tatjana, your last words for the panel discussion, not for today and not for the future.
Okay, I wrote down this time so I don't forget. The first question about the hard one, the change of the system. We have ideas. We have a lot of ideas. We are trying some of them, such as calling for the public assemblies and people to get involved in everything of this. We have also ideas of the government of experts. Those are all the topics that we are talking about on the plenum, our assembly. But the main question is, what is the system? The system is not the building of the parliament. The system is, it is the constitution, of course, but it's not the words. It's not anything imaginary. It's people. It's the people. And what are we trying to do is get to everyone, because everyone, as individual and collectively, is the system. And that's what we are trying to do with all those walks, with the cycling to Strasbourg and everything. So also, there was a time where we had hope for EU to help us. So we had the saying, "Smešiti se smeši Laura Koveši," which is like Laura Koveši is smiling at you. She's waiting for you. That's maybe the way that EU could help someday, but that's the other topic. So that's what we are trying to do, to wake up everyone, to give them the reason to maybe tomorrow say no to the corruption, to their boss that is making them do anything, whatever, to maybe 100 euros for Pionirski Park to be there, to say no, it's enough, I have my standards, I have my moral, and I think that is maybe the way. It is slow, but it's, I think, the safest. Then the Strasbourg question was actually already answered. It's 7th of April, and the cyclists from Novi Sad are going to the European Court of Human Rights to bring them a letter. What in the letter will say, it's I personally don't know yet, but I'm sure that there is a team that's working on it. What is our vision for Serbia in maybe 10 years? It's really bare minimum. It's actually basic human rights. We want to live without fear. We want to have freedom of speech. We want to trust our media. We want to trust politicians. We want to trust each other. We want to trust the region. Croatians, Albanians, those are all arguments that they made us believe. So I think the main two words for that would be truth and trust. That's all we want. We want the truth in the future for us. Also, what other students can do in Vienna or anywhere else, I think maybe the simplest answer to that question would be the same thing. We all have voices. We all have mechanisms that can serve us the way this one serves us. I think no one's garden is actually without the problem. No one's garden is totally clean. Of course, we need support. Of course, we are happy to have support from any way. But also, when, for example, everything happened in Macedonia, I started crying when I saw a call for everyone to plenums, which is actually that public assembly of students, because we are together in all this. We are all people living on the same earth. Serbia is nothing more than part of that earth. So I think those problems are not only in Serbia, and not Serbian students are not the only one facing them. One of our demands is actually from Novi Pazar. It is change of their university rector and all his people. That is the problem in Novi Sad too, and I think in most of the countries else, right? So that would be maybe the answer to that. Have your demands, point out what is bad in your society. So that's maybe the biggest support for us.
Thank you, Tatjana. I think we come to conclusion. It was a perfect conclusion, and it is also what I would say is what we all can do is that we also look at the values we are promoting. We want to promote the European Union is based upon, and that also we defend them at all times, everywhere. And I think this is also part of what everyone can do, and that also means within our societies, also when it comes to our allies, whatever international law, human rights, they are for everyone, and there is no one who actually stands above it. A huge thank you to all of you for sharing. Your thoughts? And it's only my thanks to also the cooperation partner, which is now between the snacks and the water and the wine. So thanks again to OIIP, to the Friedrich-Ebert Foundation Regional Office in Sarajevo, to Karl-Renner-Institut, and thanks for everyone who came and who is interested in this topic. So I'm quite amazed how many are. So enjoy the evening, the rest of the evening, and keep engaging in the discussions. They're going to stay here, and also the critical questions can still be addressed. Thank you so much.